And since I'm on the stage and I see Tony here, I'll break the protocol. Tony, a warm welcome. Please join us.
Originally from a small Indiana farming community, he has lived in Paris, Jakarta, New Delhi, and New York, and currently lives in San Francisco, a true global citizen. He has been founding and selling startups and backing up companies like WordPress and Blue Bottle Coffee. Being current CEO of About Me, Tony CONRAD.
Tony, welcome on stage.
Thank you. I almost tripped there. That would have been my first time for doing that. Anyways, it's great to be back in Istanbul. What an amazing city. Thank you to Plamen and the Webit team for bringing us all together. Before we get going here, just a quick question. I always like to understand who's in the audience. How many of you have a WordPress blog? Thank you. And how many of you have a MakerBot or have played with a MakerBot? And probably more importantly, how many of you wish? I see one back there. How many of you wish I had a MakerBot? All right, you should all wish you had one. How many people have a personal tracking fitness device on their wrist right now? That's amazing. That's a category that didn't exist 4 years ago. How many of you wish you had some Blue Bottle coffee? Here in Turkey, that's a tough sell because you have great coffee here. And then lastly, how many of you have an About.me page? Wow, that's amazing. All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm this guy. I'm both a founder of About.me, a site that is dedicated to helping people to tell their personal stories, as well as a venture capitalist and part of the founding team of True Ventures, where we manage just over north of $1 billion and invest in lots of visionary startups, visionary founders, some amazing ideas. The thing that we're going to talk about today is identity and why I have an incredible passion for About.me. It's a company that I started 3 years ago. I think it'll be the last startup I found, hopefully. And why I think it's important that everyone in this room actually have a starting point for their identity where people can learn about you and find out where you're active on the web, as well as be dedicated to actually pointing people and understanding the importance of that in this world of online identity. What I've learned from founders like Matt Mullenweg, or Bree Pettis at MakerBot, or Katarina Fake from Flickr, or James Freeman from Blue Bottle, is that these people aren't just interested in building a better widget. They're not interested in starting a company. The best of them are always incredibly passionate and have such a missionary kind of belief, right, in their viewpoint of the world and how they can impact you with their vision, right? And so for us, you know, when you think about, you know, change and building widgets and incremental change, and this is kind of the lifeblood of the technology industry in a lot of ways. We have things that go from the steam engine to the bullet train, right? It's just a bunch of incremental innovations that happen along the way. We have an old kind of car that becomes like a hipster car. We have old kits for Apple. How many people wish they had one of these? That'd be amazing. right? That all of a sudden becomes a supercomputer that we walk around in our pockets. You know that there's more computing power in this than there was in the mainframes that sent the man to the moon? Think about that. It's mind-blowing, right? So when we think about identity, I don't think we were interested in just building another kind of service, right? We really wanted to think about how we could empower you or myself to be able to tell our story in a way that was complete, right? A way that really represented the 360-degree view that we have of ourselves. If you think about what's happened in the world of identity and online, is that it's become incredibly fractionalized, right? There's bits and pieces of us all across the web. It's an unintended consequence of kind of the joy that apps like Facebook bring us, and Twitter and LinkedIn and WordPress and Tumblr and on and on and on, and Instagram, right? And what you realize is that your identity in each one of these areas is actually just a small piece of you. You have to really stop and think about that and recognize that that's the first lens that many people are learning about you, right? And I think that's a little bit silly. I always say I'm not the sum of my tweets. Anybody ever tweet something really stupid? Come on. Everybody should raise their hands, right? Come on, everybody tweets something stupid, right? I don't want that to be the impression that you have of me. I say a lot of smart things too, I think, on Twitter, but it's a very small piece of my identity. My professional experiences and accomplishments, I don't want to be defined by them, right? They're super important. For each one of you, they're super important, but they don't define you, right? Everybody in this room has an amazing story. I don't care who you are on this planet. You can come from the most disadvantageous environment. And yet, the fact that you're standing there looking forward and thinking about how to move your life incrementally forward, that's an amazing thing that each one of us has, right? And I'm not going to be defined by just what I did professionally. I'm proud of it. It's a huge piece of me, but it's not going to define me. And I'm certainly not going to let Facebook in my social graph and algorithms define me, right? I don't want my friends defining me. I'll define myself. And then lastly, for those of you who don't think that you have a public identity, you do. It's called Google, right? And I want to be really clear. All these services that I've talked about, I love. They're all on the front screen of my phone. I use them religiously. I know most of the founders. I'm friends with them. I'm not dissing them at all. They just aren't going to define me, right? The only person who should define me is myself. The only person who should define you is yourself, right? Everybody should have a starting point for their identity. So what we got incredibly passionate about was actually taking a step back and doing something that was a bit a very, very simple concept, and that is to create a public identity. And the power of this is that it gives me an opportunity, or it gives you an opportunity, to present yourself in the way that you see yourself, right? Starting with just a big picture of you. Are you optimistic? Are you cool? Are you not? Well, who are you, right? A picture tells so much, right? It communicates visually and viscerally to people. The second thing that we wanted to do was enable people and encourage people to share a broader sense of who they are in their narrative, right? Really, really simple. So what you'd find is all those things about me, WordPress and MakerBot and Fitbit and all these, okay, great, whatever, that's all there, okay? But it goes on to tell you the rest of my story, right? That I grew up in a farming community in Indiana. It's a core piece of my DNA. When I meet people today, they always think, oh, wow, you must have always been that. They forget that I was this. This is where I started. That's an incredible piece of my journey. I played basketball. I was a good basketball player. Won lots of awards. I worked in a factory, in a bookbinding factory. I worked on a glue machine. I was a janitor when I was 17 at a pharmacy. These are all elements of me and my public identity that are so mission critical that I'm proud of. I'm a skateboarder, right? I just joined the Tony Hawk Foundation board. I'm really into skateboarding, right? Those are all pieces of me. The second thing that we wanted to do was enable people to put a little bit of information about themselves. Where you live, where you work, if you're educated, where so, what are your interests? Then if you're a blogger, pull in your blog post, or if you're a musician, to pull in your SoundCloud, or if you're a visual artist or a model or whatever it is, to be able to pull in your videos from YouTube or Vimeo, right? All those things can happen here. And then on the bottom is we aggregate. We bring in all those social media sites where we are all collectively active. And that is important. Because when people come to my page, right, if they don't know me and they want to actually really get to know me, they come to my page, they're going to learn about my story, but they're also going to find out where I'm active on the web. They don't need to go search for it. I think that's just common sense. That's what happens today. Anybody, in email, you're introduced to somebody, how many people cut and paste or copy the name, go up to Google, you look for somebody, it takes you, I don't know, it can take a long time, or it can be right there, but it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Right? All this information should be right here in one page. Then the things that you should do with that is that you should attach it to your email signature. How many people, everybody be honest here, how many people in this room, and this is an advanced crowd, how many people in this room do not have a link to a page about them in their email signature? Nope. Come on. I do this a lot, guys. I know there's, all right, there's more. There we go. That's a lot of people. That's crazy. That's blasphemy. That's crazy, right? Because if you don't have a link in your email signature, you're just leaving it to Google or one of these other places to define you. Why would you want to do that? It's just common sense. Everybody should have that. Everybody should have a consistent way of presenting themselves with a physical business card, right? Everybody in this room, I'll bet you 95%, maybe 99% of you have a business card that does not have a picture of you on your card. And you're going to meet how many people today? And how many people are going to walk home with like 30 cards and go, I have no idea who that dude is. If I give you my card, you will remember who I am, right? That's what you can do with your About.me page. We have the same thing coming out in a mobile app, which turns it into a digital business card. We have people. There's this little thing in Twitter everybody forgets about where you're asked to point to a website about you. You know, over 70% of our users do that. So once again, it presents them in an intelligent way. You can link to it from your WordPress blog. You can link to it from Tumblr. It doesn't matter. Anything. The last thing that we did is we realized that a big piece of identity for people is a way of presenting themselves so they can get something that they want, right? A job or, you know, an opportunity, an internship, things like that. And so what we noticed was every year around the spring and the fall that we have a ton of students, a ton of millennials, people setting up About.me pages, and they were using them either as a complement to their LinkedIn page or as a full-on alternative to their LinkedIn page. And I want to be really clear, we're not trying to compete with LinkedIn. Okay, I know Reed, the founder, he's a good friend. That's not our goal. But our goal is to help people to get the things that they want. And if tethering or linking your resume, which is what Backstory does, right? So there's your About.me page at the top, then you start to scroll down. You can see more about this person, what they want to do, how they view the world, what experiences they have, where they're looking, and then if you have a portfolio of work, if you're a photographer, or if you're a student that does things, or an architect, or anything like that, having links that go off to those pages, right? It's just an intelligent resume. So we think all of these things are really important for everyone to kind of think about as you present yourself. So this is where I'll leave it. You may not be a believer in this. I think from the number of people I saw in the crowd, actually quite a few of you are. But today we have millions and millions and millions of people on About.me. It's one of the fastest growing sites on the web. It'll soon be a top 15 consumer internet property, like in the next year, right? This is a massive, massive platform that's growing. We have incredible users, people telling their story, all kinds of stories. We have people that are like my father, who's 87, that uses it to send out to people when he wants to be a volunteer, all the way down to my son, who used it in his college application, right? We have incredible advisors, people like Tony Hawk, or Dick Costolo, CEO of Twitter, or Veronica Belmont, or Kevin Rose, or Matt Mullenweg. We have, I think, 30 advisors, something crazy like that. And we have some of the best funding possible from Silicon Valley, from True Ventures, from Foundry, from Google Ventures, and lots of other people. And that is it. Thank you. I had 10 seconds.
You have 10 seconds left.
I do.
Wow. I never thought that this will happen to you, you know. You have so much things to share. May I ask you to have a sit? Just, sure. Just for a sec, because I just looked at Twitter and was a bunch of questions for you.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for being that active. But my first question, obviously, is around the topic that I've started today with our biggest mistakes we are doing in life. So I wonder which of these, as we nicely call them, screw-ups, is not included in your resume?
How many people put their screw-ups on their resume? I certainly don't. So there's a couple different things I think that are interesting in my own personal journey. One was when I lived in France. I went to France, I accepted a great job. I got there and I realized that I couldn't speak French very well. And so there was a bit of a screw-up, a miscalculation on my part. French people really prefer when you speak French, right?
The same with Turkish, by the way.
That's in Turkey. I noticed that when you're working. So, the thing I did there was I learned a lot about myself in that moment because I went to Antoine Rabou, who's the founder CEO of BSN at the time, and I said, hey, I'd like to move to southern France and work in sales. And he said, you can't work in sales because you don't speak French. And I said, aha, therein lies the conundrum. So let's sort this out. So I ended up becoming a yogurt merchandiser. Does anybody know what a yogurt merchandiser does? So that's when you go to the store at 2 in the morning and you clean the yogurt shelf. You take all the yogurt off and you sit there with a dairy category manager and you clean the shelf, and then you reset the shelf to optimize it so it has more revenue, right? But it's from 2 in the morning until 7 in the morning. And that's a very humbling job to do, especially when you've been successful professionally. You have to take sometimes a huge step back, and that's what that taught me that moment, right? I took a huge step back, and it catapulted my career in a lot of great ways. And then the second one is an interesting period in 2002 when I was bored. I had a partner. I didn't like the partner that well, so I'd kind of screwed up there. And I took a step back and I said to myself, I'm only going to work with people that I'm excited about working with. And at that point in time, I met young Matt Mullenweg, who was 18, and we kickstarted WordPress. We founded True Ventures, which has now got $1 billion and has funded some of the leading companies in the Valley. And I started my first company called Sphere, and that had a huge outcome. So it was a good screw up.
That's a good screw up, yeah. I feel more screwed than you anyway. It's, obviously, I'm the most screwed up here. When I hear about all these stories, I did the biggest screw ups in the life. I can be very proud. Here I'm number one. What about, you've opened the topic about partnerships. What would be your advice about partnerships? Because obviously, that's the topic about finding something. You know, normally you find somebody who you believe you can achieve your dreams together. You grow up some ideas, but then at certain point, it turns that you're totally different to one another. So how do you really find your best? Or let's say, how do you find, is it better to go by yourself and, you know, conquer the world? Or it's better to find as many partners as possible. What would be your advice for startups coming to you? I mean,
I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's really empowering, and I think some of us, and probably most of you, we're unique in that we kind of march to our own drum beat. And I think it's naive to think that we don't need to do things our own way, right? But I also think it's naive to believe that you can do it by yourself. And if you don't have amazing partners and amazing foundation around you, everything from family to your partners and your coworkers, I doubt you're going to be very successful, right? There's incredible leverage in having the right people around the table.
Okay, Tony, I see questions like, how can I find the physical Tony, not at About Me, but here? Are you going to be sticking with us around here so they can find you here?
The physical Tony is here, yes. I'm going to be here for sure. I'm always honored to come to this conference, my second time, so I'll be around for...
Okay,
and
so
in fact, I'll tell you what we're going to be doing. Andra, who is with me here today, she and I, we brought our camera, and a little impromptu, but we'll take headshots of people that you can use as your new About.me page. So I'm pretty good with the camera.
Okay, now you have the promise of Tony to see him here. I see quite a few questions, but we are already quite past time. So please make sure you catch up with all the speakers. They're around here. They're going to be at the speakers corner after this. It's about networking here at Webit. So I hope you could win their attention. Tony, thanks for joining the Global Webit Congress. It's pleasure and honor to have you. Really. Thanks for joining us for a second time. Thank you.